Okay, folks, we're going to have a presentation here on basically VDI. We're going to cover a couple of different things, VXRail, we're going to cover Horizon, we're going to cover a new solution offering from Dell EMC called VDI Complete, which is a packaged way to buy your VDI deployment. So the quick disclaimer that you've all seen a million times already this week. Before we go past this, I'll just quickly introduce what my team is responsible for. So I'm CTO and Senior Director of Product Management, Strategy and Engineering for an organization in Dell EMC called Cloud Client Computing. And basically we are responsible for all of the VDI reference architectures that we deliver for our customers globally. So we have engineering teams in Limerick in Ireland and in Austin in Texas, and then product management in Austin. So usually when I start these conversations, I start with a comment that is, VDI is the most complex solution to implement in IT today. And sometimes there'll be like an SAP administrator or an Oracle administrator or somebody like that might be in the room and they go, oh, I'm not sure I'd agree with that. But if you think about it, it touches every single aspect of IT. So you've got all of your data center infrastructure. You've got client images, you've got brokers, you've got hypervisors, you've got antivirus, you've got applications, you've got to get connectivity back into your data center applications, etc., etc. If any one of those things lets you down, the performance is going to be horrible. And as a result, your user experience really will be very bad. And that's where we start to see a lot of VDI deployments go pretty badly. So what I wanted to talk about here today was really the evolution of VDI, first of all. So 8 years ago, we started with a single use case on traditional infrastructure. Usually it was shared with something else. About 5 years ago, we started to increase the number of use cases that we were using from a VDI standpoint. So really, we started to see some good capabilities from a security perspective. People started to realize, well, I can actually secure my data. I've had a couple of laptops that got lost. My data got taken. I need to bring that data back into the data center, and I need to make sure that it stays there, but I need to have everybody be able to access it quickly and efficiently without having to do large downloads. So VDI really started to answer that. And then over the last couple of years, we started to see use cases like mobile, 3D. 3D, we never thought 3-4 years ago that high-end graphics applications like CATIA, Dassault, Autodesk would ever be a possibility from a VDI standpoint. But they really are today with GPUs from NVIDIA. A typical project lifecycle is going to be somewhere between about 190 to 250, 260 days. So that's where you're starting with an assessment, you go into a full plan design for your deployment, you maybe do some packaging of applications, some POC type work there, and then you might start to do your deployment at about, say, 200 to 250 days. It's a pretty long project lifecycle to do a VDI deployment. So what we want to try and do is help you to reduce that. So we get a lot of customers who say to us, hey, I really want to do VDI, but it takes so long to deploy. I'm considering doing VDI from the cloud, but I'm not so keen to have all of my VDI sessions running off on infrastructure that I don't own. I want to be able to have it on premise, but can you help me with a faster deployment process? So the VDI technology stack, we'll just quickly explore the kind of things that are included or that you need to consider in that process. Basically, starting at the bottom, you've got every piece of data center infrastructure, networking, storage, compute, hypervisors. Then you're into what do you want to have from a broker perspective. So if you're going to look at VMware Horizon or Horizon Cloud, maybe, for example, on the on-prem version. You maybe want persona management because you want to be able to offer a unique experience per user, but you don't want to have persistent desktops. So we still see a lot of customers who say, yeah, I've got to do persistent desktops because I need to have a unique desktop delivery option for each one of my users. And that's not actually true. You can do that kind of capability with a linked clone or something like that and use proper persona management to do it. Now, buying all of these things independently gives you lots of choice and lots of freedom. But it comes with lots of problems. So if you buy your network from Cisco, your storage from NetApp, your compute from Dell, your hypervisors from VMware, etc., then you've got lots of different support contracts that maybe are expiring at different times. You've got a complicated purchase or acquisition process. And as a result, integration, management, support, and complexity are difficult. So what we propose is, from a hardware perspective, you leverage something like VXRail, which comes with everything that you need. The hypervisor is installed. We now support out of the factory M10 or M60 NVIDIA cards with the VXRail V-Series platform. From a broker application management, persona management perspective, then Horizon 7 Enterprise. It really gives you everything that you need, and you can purchase that from Dell as an OEM license. So again, that's going to come in as one particular purchase option. And then obviously your endpoint. Your endpoint can be a WISE endpoint, a zero or thin client. We support the latest BLAST protocols, which is really important if you're going to do any kind of graphics work within your sessions. And basically we've encapsulated all of this into one offering called VDI Complete. So I'll come to that in a little bit. One of the things that I did want to talk about is we frequently see customers spend an enormous amount of money on all of the infrastructure in the bottom box and the enterprise license from Horizon. And then they'll go and implement the cheapest possible thin client that they can get their hands on. And the experience is horrible. So you really do have to consider what it is, the workload that you're going to run, and what type of connectivity you need. So do you need to have multi-monitor support, for example? Are you going to run a high-end graphics or video applications where you maybe need a high buffer rate? So you need to consider the capabilities of the box a little bit better than you might think. So the whole point of this is to simplify the deployment process. So we have surveyed the PSO organization within VMware, our own services organization, and that's where we come up with this average of 250 days for deployment. By leveraging something like VXRail, we can bring that down to about 120 days. And packaging it through Dell EMC with Horizon 7 and the WISE Thin Client simplifies that whole acquisition process. So that speeds up. This is all being tested and validated. So as I mentioned, we have a performance test lab in Limerick and in Austin, where we do large-scale validation, up to 5,000 users. We use and I actually have a talk later on at 2:30 about the validation process that we use. So we go through all the login VSI, what are the metrics that we look at that are important to consider, etc. And how do you size your own environment? So what are some of your options out there in terms of using other tools, like maybe something from Liquidware Labs, for example, to go and size your own environment, okay? But part of our validation is there to give you a starting point. So particular configurations will be able to support 150, 200, 230 users, depending on the user type that you've got in your environment. So performance is an important one, and we try to make sure that we validate strongly for that. Also, we are very strongly focused on user experience. So as we go through our validation, some of the things that we do are things like screen resolution within the session. So if you consider the difference between an 800 by 600 and a 1920 screen resolution, you're basically going to consume quite a bit more CPU utilization. As you go up through your different screen resolution options, you can consume, the difference between that 800 up to 1920 is about 20% extra CPU utilization for all the sessions that you would be running on that host, which means that you're going to get lower user density. So we include that in all of our validation, so it is as real world as possible. And sometimes you'll see numbers from other vendors that have very similar hardware specifications to what we've got, but much higher numbers. And I'd strongly encourage you to read the fine print, because that's where they're using things like 800 by 600. They're really reducing down what they're doing within the session, etc. So this is VDI Complete. What I'm showing you here at the moment is the 13G option. Okay, so 13G is the PowerEdge 13G servers. It's a bit of an eye chart, so I'm not going to ask you to read this. But basically what we've got is a build option and a buy option. The build option is all the vSAN ready nodes. So you basically buy the raw hardware and you build it yourself. And then the buy option is buying VXRail, where it comes out of the factory with the hypervisor installed, some pre-configuration for vSAN. You get thousands of dollars of white glove installation services included with that. You get VXRail Manager. You get a lot of additional EMC applications like Recovery Point and so on for disaster recovery. Now, what you'll notice in the middle bar here at the bottom is a price per user per month. So this brings me back to that conversation that we were having with customers where they said, we really like the fast deployment option of going to the cloud. It allows us to say, yeah, I want to put 100 users on, and pretty much within a month, I can have them up there. I got to do a little bit of management of my image, and I can put them up there. And I can, and also, I like the option of being able to pay on an OpEx basis. So this is becoming more and more frequent. Customers come to us and say, yeah, CapEx outlay of $500,000 or $1 million or $10 million, depending on the size, is really hard for me to swallow. I'd like to be able to pay this on an OpEx model, so I can, if I decide that I want to reduce my infrastructure, or I don't want to continue to scale up to the 10,000 that I purchased all up front, I can just say, no, I'm not going to do that this month. So what we're offering is the option to buy vSAN ready nodes or VXRail infrastructure with the Horizon Enterprise OEM license, heavily discounted, with the Wise Thin clients for a fixed cost per user per month. And we do that through Dell Financial Services. So basically, it's like leasing a car. Okay, you're leasing all of the infrastructure. And again, basically, you can see at the bottom, we've added in things like monitors and so on. I mean, you can basically add anything you want to this. But what it allows you to do is to have that very cost-effective. If you look at these and the types of configurations that we have here, the types of deployment options and densities that you can get on this, the cost per user per month, I can guarantee will work out cheaper than any cloud provide desktop that you can get in the market today. So this is a really strong consideration for a lot of customers, especially when they want that price per user per month option, but they want the infrastructure on site. So just a little talk about some of the VXRail options. So VXRail, as you know, came to Dell through our merger with EMC. Fantastic option. I mean, the lifecycle management capability, if you haven't seen VXRail Manager, I would strongly encourage you to go literally right over there to the EMC stand and take a look at it, get a demonstration on it. The lifecycle management capability, the ability to update basically any software that's on that box with zero downtime. You know, you can, it'll manage the transition of your VMs off to your other hosts, etc. Very, very efficiently. Now, what we have here is a number of different options. So the G series on the left is our Quanta Blade configuration, which is being replaced fairly soon with a Dell Blade option. The E, V, P, and S series are all PowerEdge servers. So the E series is basically the R630, and then the V and the P are the R730, and the S then is the R730XD, which is our large capacity storage platform. You might say, well, why do we have a V and a P series? The V1 is basically our graphics spec'd R730. So what that basically means is when you want to put GPUs into a PowerEdge platform, because of the size of the NVIDIA or AMD GPUs, mostly we're using NVIDIA, you need to use a low profile heatsink and an 1100 watt power supply. So the P series comes with a 750 watt and a high profile heatsink. So if you wanted to put a GPU into a P series or 730, you would have to buy a graphics customer kit, replace the heatsink, and replace the power supply. Okay. The two that we focus on from a VDI standpoint, the two most popular platforms are the R630, where customers don't have any intention to use GPUs. That's becoming less and less frequent, I have to tell you, as we are starting to see more and more customers just use GPUs with general sessions. Now that has a strong consideration for you in terms of user density. With something like the 2698, so we have the E5 2600 family here from a processor perspective. That's the Intel Proc. The top level one, we have a couple of different configurations that we recommend. The top level one that we recommend is the E5 2698 V4. With that and about a half a terabyte of memory, on an R630 or R730, you can get up to about 230 users per host. They would be task workers, 1 vCPU, 2 gigs of memory, probably a 10 to 30 gigs worth of disk space. Okay. The E series, as I said, is the one new platform, would be used for customers who don't want to use GPUs, and the V series is the R730. We pretty much use exactly the same hardware configuration between the two boxes, but the V series obviously gives us the option to add GPUs. Now, as I said, when you add GPUs, the number of users that are going to be able to access those GPUs is limited. If you look at the M10 GPU card from NVIDIA, for example, you're limited to 64 sessions per card, and you can put 2 in each one of those boxes. Okay? If you want to go with a higher profile, so there are different profile options within the grid software. So that's using a 512 meg option, which is the lowest spec. NVIDIA and VMware are generally recommending you don't use that one, that you go to 1 gig. That means you're going to halve the number of users. So you're down to now 32 users per card, which is 64 in the host. That's where you would not want to go with a 2698 V4 proc, because you're going to waste all of that processing power for the GPU users. Okay. Now what you could do is have a mix of GPU and non-GPU users in the box. As we move to 14G, so we've just brought out our 14th generation PowerEdge server, we can now support 3 GPUs per host, and that allows us to get up to 192 GPU-enabled sessions. So with the 2698 V4 proc, you're basically able to pretty much maximize the capacity of that box. Okay. Just before I move on from that, the 512 meg profile in the grid software, I must mention that we do have a lot of customers who use that and use it very successfully. I did a presentation with University of Arkansas at VMworld US, and they have a enormous, thousands of users using CATIA Dassault. They got all these design labs. They use the half gig profile, and they have had no performance issues whatsoever. Now, where you'll start to see performance issues in that scenario is they were using single monitor, and they were using like 1440 by whatever the other side of that is. So not a massive screen resolution. But if they went up 1920, etc., beyond that, or if they wanted to use multiple monitors, that's where the half gig profile would really start to struggle to deliver the capabilities for those applications. Okay, so I kind of spoke about this already. We've many different thin client options. Again, go take a look in the stand. We've got our latest one there, the 3040, which is really cheap and really effective. Multi-monitor support, comes with blast support, etc. And Keith Keogh, our chief architect over there, will be able to take you through all the options on that. We've got a mobile option. We've got an all-in-one, which is basically your monitor and the thin client is built into the back of it, which again gives a lot of options for various different configurations. So that kind of brings us to the end of the presentation. At this point, I understand that there's no microphone to go around, so we won't be able to have questions asked openly, but I can now answer questions. They won't be part of the recorded session. Isn't that right? Okay, so we're going to take it off to the side for questions. Okay? Okay, so I hope that was a really whirlwind, quick introduction to VDI Complete. Again, the whole premise of VDI Complete is to make sure that you have the options that you need in as most cost-effective way as possible, and it gives you a new payment option that has never historically been available through, certainly not from Dell EMC, and not to the best of my knowledge from any of our competitors, to give you that OpEx payment model for your hardware and your infrastructure. Okay, so I'm going to stick around for 15-20 minutes. If there's any questions that you want to go through, then feel free to come up and we can talk through those. Okay, thanks a lot.